Hi, I'm Christy Fortner. Today I'll demonstrate how to make smoothbore Teflon hose assemblies using a swedge-style procedure. First we'll go through the main steps to assemble the coupling onto the hose, and then the steps of the swedge procedure. The tools we'll use include cutting shear or cut-off saw with abrasion wheel. If you use the abrasion wheel, you will need heavy-duty masking tape and a sharp razor. Other necessary tools are a hose insertion die holder, hose insertion dies, hose expanders, swedger, or a PC-707 with swedge conversion kit, which includes the actuator rod, swedge adapter, swedge collar, and the swedge die cone. You also need swedge dies and swedge pushers. First, let's go through the steps of the hose coupling assembly. In step 1, we'll determine the hose cut length for a 14-inch assembly. In this example, we'll use two 10 C-14-10 FJX fittings. The cutoff dimensions for these fittings are listed in the catalog. You can also measure the cutoff by measuring the two fittings thread ends together to the point where the hose stops on the stems. Subtract that measurement, which is 2.5 inches, from the 14-inch total assembly length to find the hose cut length of 11.5 inches. In step 2, we'll cut the hose. There are a couple ways to do it. We'll show you our preferred method first, that is with a metal cutting shear. Before you cut the hose, lay it out flat and measure and mark it at 11.5 inches. Now place the hose in the cutting shear and make the cut. Be sure that the cut is square and clean. Another way to cut the hose is with an abrasive wheel on a cutoff saw. Wrap heavy-duty masking tape around the hose at the cutting point, at least twice. Mark on the tape where to cut. Be sure to use ear and eye protection when you use the abrasion wheel. Now we'll cut on the mark. After you cut, deburr the inside of the hose with a sharp razor. To further minimize fraying and flaring of the wire, hold the hose at a 45-degree angle to the wheel and grind down the outside hose edge. Slowly rotate the hose one full revolution. Then carefully remove the tape. Step 3. Place the ferrule into the hose insertion die holder with the tapered end of the ferrule down. Step 4. Select the appropriate size hose insertion dies and place them over the ferrule in the holder with the internal taper toward the ferrule. Step 5. Push and rotate the hose through the dies into the ferrule until it stops. Remove the hose with the ferrule attached. Check the hose and braid to ensure that they are properly inserted against the internal stop of the ferrule. For larger ID hoses, to prevent the braid from backing off the hose, firmly hold the hose and guide it into the ferrule with your thumb. Be sure that both the wire braid and the Teflon tube are fully seated against the stop of the ferrule. Step 6. Select the appropriate size expansion rod and secure it in a vise. Then push the hose onto the expansion rod several times. Step 7. Place the stem and nut, if used, onto the expansion rod and insert the stem into the hose. Make sure that the stem rests tightly against the back of the stem shoulder with no gaps. Now repeat the steps for the other hose end. Place the ferrule into the holder with the tapered end of the ferrule down. Place the dies over the ferrule and insert the hose. Expand several times. Place the stem and nut on the expansion rod and insert them into the hose end. Now we're ready to go through the swedge procedure steps. For this procedure, we'll use a PC-707 crimper with the swedge conversion kit already installed. You can also use a power swedger or hand pump swedger, which we'll look at in a minute. Step 1. Lift the actuator rod to the swedge position. Select the proper swedge dies and lubricate the bore with oil. Step 2. Place the dies in the tapered cone. Step 3. Select the proper pusher and lock it into the collar. Step 4. Place the hose through the die and insert the fitting into the seat of the pusher. For Step 5, use one hand to hold the assembly so the fitting remains seated in the pusher while you press the start button with the other hand. Guide the hose and fitting through the taper of the die. To avoid injury, always keep your hands out from under the ram. In Step 6, once the pusher has bottomed out on the dies, immediately release the start button. Remove the hose assembly, wipe it clean, and inspect for a smooth swedge with no gaps. Repeat steps 4 through 6 for the other end of the assembly. When using the PC707, once you have completed swedging, pull the actuator rod back down to the crimp position for future crimping. If you choose to use the hand pump swedger, lock the pusher into position. Lubricate the bore and then place the dies in the die holder. Place the hose and the dies with the fitting seated in the pusher and begin pumping until the pusher bottoms out on the top of the dies. Then, remove the handle and release the pressure. Remove the assembly, wipe it clean, and inspect for a smooth swedge with no gaps. Now, wasn't that easy? We hope these step-by-step instructions are all you need to get started. If you have any further questions or suggestions, please feel free to share them with us. We're here to help.